I want to start out by welcoming everyone to today's webinar, which is hosted by Rails to Trails Conservancy's Trail Expert Network. My name is Brian Hausch, and I'm the Midwest Policy Manager here at RTC, and I'll be introducing today's webinar. Today's topic, as you can see from the title slide, is finding the right maintenance approach for your trail or trail network, and we have an awesome panel of presenters for you who will be covering a wide range of topics. Tom Sexton, RTC's Northeast Regional Office Director, will be moderating the webinar and has been actively working with partners to identify, develop, and share best practices related to trails maintenance. We will briefly introduce the topic, facilitate discussion among the panelists, and take your questions. And we are happy to be joined today by Bob Folwell, calling in from Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Bob has much to share with his 13 years on the Schuylkill River Greenways National and State Heritage Area team and his current role as the Schuylkill River Water Trail Manager, focused on revising the maintenance and management plan, among other initiatives. Next, we're going to hear from Dan Kaderly and DJ White, park managers for Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks, and they're calling together from Columbus, Ohio. They're going to tell us more about the importance of communication among partners to create more maintenance-friendly trails. And our third and final presenter is Matt Holmes, Executive Director of Groundwork Richmond, and he's going to be joining us from California and will highlight the importance of strategic partnerships for sustainable maintenance practices, as well as the lessons learned from strong engagement with community volunteers. You'll be able to review our panelists' full bios in the recorded version of the webinar that will be distributed after today's live presentations. And I do want to emphasize that this is the first in a series of webinars focusing on maintenance, and we want your feedback during and after this webinar to determine what topics would be most valuable to explore in more depth. As the rail trail and multi-use trail movement matures, there is growing concern about how to maintain trail infrastructure to ensure safety and a high-quality experience for the growing amount of trail users. This goes beyond the how-to mechanics, and how to pay for it brings in policy implications. And to effectively make the case, we have to be clear on costs throughout the lifespan of a trail. RTC is excited to help further progress in this area, but before we bring in our experts, let me review a few housekeeping items. First, as you probably already noticed, attendees will not be able to speak during today's webinar. All attendees are automatically muted as they join to keep background noise to a minimum. We'll be keeping an eye out for tech problems that may emerge on our end, but we will be unable to help with individual tech issues. If you experience any such problem, your best course of action is to contact GoToWebinar's free customer support directly or view a selection of help topics at the links shown on the screen. I encourage you to copy those down before we move on from this slide. If for whatever reason you lose the webinar connection, please re-click your login link. You will be able to rejoin the ongoing session at any time. We are recording this webinar, so worst case scenario, you'll be able to view it later. We built in some time for Q&A at the end of today's presentation. If you have any questions about the best practices you'll soon hear about, please type them in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen at any time. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if you don't get to yours, and if you have any questions that come up in the future, you'll find contact information for our panelists at the conclusion of this webinar. RTC's website has recently undergone a redesign. If you would like to view our resources, simply go to railstotrails.org and select Resources in the header bar. There you'll find the Trail Building Toolbox, a how-to guide for trail development with a variety of introductory topics, as well as past webinars and much more. And finally, after today's webinar, you will receive a follow-up email containing a survey asking for your thoughts on what to prioritize in future trails maintenance webinars, as well as how you rate our performance on today's webinar. More information about RTC's Trail Expert Network with a link to sign up for occasional email notices from us, and most importantly, that recording of today's webinar. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my RTC colleague, Tom Sexton, to get started. Tom?
Thank you, Brian. This is Tom in central Pennsylvania, and hopefully some of you have had some time to read our 2015 study, which was completed by over 200 managers. It had 113 questions, and some of the results were very revealing, I think. Let me share a few of those. 60% of the managers indicated they did not have maintenance plans, and only around 40 had could give us a budget number. And of those, either they didn't share or they had a really difficult time breaking those the budget they had, that number, down into tasks or even sometimes broad categories. Not surprising to you probably is the amount of volunteer work that goes into a trail. Half of the managers surveyed indicated that around half of their maintenance is done by volunteers. So they're always a great resource. In general, the study gave us a good breakdown of the most intensive basic tasks and who performs those. And that was actually a third in a series of we've done in the last 25 years or so of studies, increasing in size every time. Our trail managers do great work, often with limited resources. But as the movement grows, we need to make sure we get to the next level in a national context always. Rail trails and shared use pathways are mainstream infrastructure now, so our collective science must reflect that fact to keep up with the other transportation modes and recreation pursuits that are vying for public and private support. Our first step, I believe, must be to agree on a definition of what is routine or basic maintenance, especially to determine costs. Too often, we aren't prepared to answer these questions in town halls when advocating for trails. Also, often huge rebuilding costs, sometimes called refurbishing or updating or renovating, are put into that cost figure. And much of this is deferred maintenance, and that leads to an incorrect perception that trail maintenance costs are indeed high, when in fact, based on limited research, at least I feel confident saying rural rail trails, maybe $500 less per mile. And for many of those trails, that includes the value, not the cost, but the value of volunteer work. Suburban trails, of course, much more. Urban segments, much more again, as you might imagine. In the future, RTC is preparing more tools to assist in cost estimates and budgeting, and this may be a good topic for future webinars. Maintenance opportunities and challenges are presenting themselves more and more as the pace of trail development and the movement quickens. Threats include more flooding impacting an aging infrastructure. And speaking of aging, our volunteer base, it seems to be getting a lot older, and a lot of these people grew up with the trails and were advocates in the first place in those town hall meetings, and they're sort of aging out. I know I am, and my kids haven't stepped up. But there are a lot of opportunities also, like economies of scale when we fill gaps and create longer systems, which will make transportation of materials and equipment much easier and more efficient. And more, Americans are calling for more balanced transportation policies at the state and national level. So let's get ready. Before we go into our speakers, I wanted to do a quick survey so the speakers know who they're talking to and you know the full crowd and the depth of their experience. So now you should see the first question pop up on your screen that should only take you a couple seconds. If you can just tell us how long you've been either a supervisor or controlling budgets or a hands-on capacity on a trail, that would be great. Please do that now. This will be a series of 5 questions, and the last 2, you'll be able to put a little more content, and I'll give you a little more time. So maybe not surprisingly, 21% are relatively new, less than a year. Most people are 1 to 5. And although great to see, excellent to see, because I think these folks can especially help us understand where we've come and where we're going to go, is 32% of you have 10 or more years in trail maintenance. Great, thank you. Also quickly, is your trail predominantly, many are mixtures, but if you can tell us if they're urban, suburban, or rural, that would be very helpful to know. Thank you. Most rural, 55% rural, followed by suburban 28 and urban 17. So not a bad mixture. Quite often we don't get enough urban flavor in that. So that's very helpful to our speakers. Thank you. And our third question. Is your trail paved or unpaved? You know, and predominantly, or is it really sort of 50-50, 40-60? Let us know. This has, of course, big maintenance implications. Both, 40% is the winner, followed by paved and unpaved 25%, which is interesting because, and you'll see today from our speakers in Ohio, many of their rural trails and suburban trails are paved. All right, the fourth question, and we'll give it a little more time to click that other box, because if we didn't really answer, if we didn't provide an option that fits you, you can click other and go to that in the poll. In the chat box that's located for other, in the chat box that's located to the right in your viewing panel, you can indicate in there, and that would really help to know for future webinars what topics we need to deal with. Hang with us, we'll have this in a second. Okay, great. What is the most expensive, or labor intensive, I should say, sorry, or expensive task performed on your trail? And not surprisingly, and so I think we're pretty close in saying these are usually the big 3 from everybody. All right, last question. What is the most important routine task that you are unable to do, unable to perform sufficiently because of budget constraints? Please select one. And again, go to your chat box if there's something that's not up there that you would like to choose. Bingo. Okay. Invasive species control. Yep. Tree root control, both very expensive. And bathroom and cleaning and repairs, yep, not quite as much. Not all trails have those facilities. And then other. So it'll be fun to look at the other later on, and we can share that with you. So thank you for providing this information. This really helps to focus the webinar today and the design of future webinars on this topic. So we're rolling along well. Let me turn it now to Bob, our first speaker, who's been at this for, going on almost 4 decades. Bob, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Yeah, I'm from Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Let me see how this, the controls are not, the arrows are not working. Brian, Kelly, the arrows are not working. Okay. No, I'm not connected.
Try it now, Bob.
No, keyboard arrows are not working. Oh, okay. Now it should work. Okay. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm from the Schuylkill River National and State Heritage Area. As Tom said, I've been in this business for almost 4 decades. I started in '83 in Chester County, worked through Schuylkill River and Chester Valley Trails, and now I'm here with the Greenways, working in trails in Schuylkill and Berks counties. It's odd for a nonprofit to be in charge of trails, so I have a different approach than when I did working for county government. Our mission here, very quickly, is connect residents, visitors, communities to the Schuylkill River and Schuylkill River Trail by serving as a catalyst for civic engagement and environmental development in order to foster stewardship of the watershed and its heritage. It's quite a word salad, but the important part is my job, is the Schuylkill River Trail. So moving forward, I don't know. Oh gosh, it's not moving again. I don't know if we're having connection problems. I'll do it this way. This is our signature project, which is parts of my trail. Overall, we are in an urban, suburban, and rural mix. 120 miles are planned, 75 is complete. Of those 75 complete, I manage about 33 of it. So I'm close to half. We're going from Philadelphia to Frackville. Frackville is in the heart of Schuylkill County. It's the old coal to manufacturing plant system, and so we're using the extra railroad provided by Conrail, the Pennsylvania line, for most of our trail work. We have 4 active projects now. It's just 2 bridges, a section of trail up in Frackville, and another section of trail down in Berks County. Our signature event is the Schuylkill River Sojourn. Now the buttons are working. And that's our week-long paddle, 120 miles down the river. And as Tom said, I'm also the water trail manager. Goes with both. Okay, I've been tasked with the quick maintenance overview, so I'm going to move through this rather quickly. A lot of you are very experienced, and so if this seems redundant to you, I apologize up front. The reason we deal with maintenance at all is, why is this an issue? And it's obvious, because no one cuts a new ribbon on a mower. It's always on new trails only. So after all the work is done and people start to use it, that's when the heavy lifting really can start. And it goes on for decades. So why is this an issue? Because there's no grants for this sort of thing. You're constantly being questioned on costs, and your best laid plans always of trying to maintain or design something so you don't have to maintain it tend to fail over time. Who is it being maintained for? Now, this is an interesting question in regards to, we're really here for people. We are managing this trail for people to use. So the question then becomes is, okay, well, how do they want to use it? In certain areas, we have horses. The horses do not like paved trails. We can't put a graded bridge under a horse. It doesn't work. So knowing what your users' expectations are, what they want versus what they need, and what other activities they want to do on it, like programs or 5Ks are very popular. I'm sure many of you run into this. But so those are the issues, is you have to maintain it for expectations. 3 lessons of trail maintenance, for me at least, is water, water, water. Now, for those that are in the southwestern part of the country, maybe not so much, but up here, everything happens because of water. It's our largest determinant of maintenance frequency, whether we have to mow the grass every 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Well, in our case, we're a nonprofit, so we mow it about 3 times a year. Trying to move forward again. It's not moving. Let's try it. Okay. When we're dealing with the maintenance planning, it's establishing the priorities first. And what is always the most important is the safety of the user. That cascades into all sorts of tasks and policies. But I always add employee in there too, or volunteer. I mean, they're as part of your workforce, their safety is just as important. The costs tend to establish priorities. The aesthetics, those are the extra trailhead things, the landscaping that might go in, things that aren't necessary for the function but make it an overall experience. And I have what I show as the wouldn't it be nice ifs. These are the lists that all staff have, where we sit and we think, okay, it would be great if we could do this someday. You always have that list around in case it coincides with somebody else's list and it can be done forward, but it really becomes very little of a policy action. You need a windfall of money to make that happen. And then other local priorities that you may have discovered through your public interviews and users. Down at the corner, this is something my father used to say. It's traditional methods of the point of departure. It's the old, just because we always did it this way, it doesn't mean that we continue doing it that way. Now we'll move the slide forward. Okay, these are the maintenance tasks. And again, I apologize if most of you are familiar with this, but this is how it breaks down for our trail. The picture on the right is our Trails on Tap program, very popular. We were able to have alcoholic beverages served next to the Schuylkill River Trail on weekends all up and down the Schuylkill River. As a heritage area, we're looking to bring people out, so I thought I'd throw that picture in. The surfaces. ADA issues are always important. Even if you have a private trail such as I do for public use, we still have to have it meet all of the ADA requirements. Surface types, I have all kinds. I have the stone, which is 2 inches of quarry dust. The trail I had in Chester County was first put in by road oil. This is what was used on the sides of paved roads 20, 30 years ago. It was called MC30 road oil. It looked like pavement, but in 8 years, the whole thing came up in slabs. And then, of course, pavement, and one of the things that dictates your surface is slopes. If you have an over 4 to 5% slope, gravel really starts running at that point. Next issue is always drainage. Water, water, water. The existing facilities that you may have left over from the railroad, if you're on a rail trail, tend to handle what you need. Now, the reason I have drainage inefficiency in there is because on our rail trails, these railroads are generally put in at a 1% or less slope, very gentle. So if we're able to drain the trail, not necessarily drain the site, but just get the water off the trail and into the nearby ditches, it then takes time for those ditches to empty out. We're under new constraints here, as many are, about not only the quantity and the quality of the water. So the more we can contain the water in what I call these linear retention basins, the better quality we have. So that's why I say, drainage inefficiency can actually be a good thing as long as your trail surface is clear. And then 18-inch culverts set at the frost line, whatever that is for you, if you need to add them later on. We actually built part of a trail, saw where it was running over in a couple of places where pipes were needed, put in the pipes, and we were done. Vegetation, you have to set your clear zones, your left and right, and overhead. And the overhead is kind of an interesting thing, because if it's too short, it looks like people are going through a tunnel, and you're near more suburban and urban areas. That makes people nervous. So if you can get your overhead at about 12 to 16 feet, it really improves the ambience of the trail, more of a gallery kind of appearance rather than a tunnel. And of course, we have all edge communities, and we're constantly fighting the invasive species of multiflora rose and bittersweet and all kinds of really ugly stuff. Architectural barriers, these are the bollard gates, hardware, bumper blocks, boulders, and fencing. They seem to take the biggest hit of vandalism. Trash is the recycling and trail litter. We do not keep trash cans at our trailheads. One volunteer did that one time, and within a week he had a bumper sitting out there to take out to the trash. And then, of course, the site amenities, parking, restrooms, trash, and furnishings. So we'll move it forward. Okay, these are the things they don't teach you in trail school. I've been at this like a long time. So what I have found, these are some of my life lessons, and some of the other speakers are going to go into this in much more detail. The communications is very important. Websites, alerts, expectations. Let the user know what they're coming to find. We get a lot of questions. How's this trail section? Is this paved? I'm in a wheelchair. I need to know if the slopes are suitable. So if you can put this information out there, people will find it, and they'll know how to act accordingly, especially if you're a volunteer group where you don't have a central receptionist or someone to answer those questions. This is really important stuff for a lot of users. Partnerships is your local support network. I know names of every municipality that I work with, wherever my trail is, and we meet occasionally. We help each other out occasionally, and I rely on them for local police support. We don't have rangers, so we have to know just about everybody up and down the trail. And if something happens on the trail, we get a phone call right away. Volunteers, I understand that's going to be discussed further. Our volunteer program allows us to have a trail that owes only $500 to $700 a mile per year. Liabilities and lawsuits, I'm not even going to go there. It's just something that they don't teach you. We have been the victim of about 8 lawsuits. We've so far escaped them all, and that's good from policy and planning purposes. Maintenance design. When you're doing the trail, sometimes there's a kind of an obstacle of talking to those people that are going to maintain it. So it's a good thing this is a real quick example, but if your trail has a 4-foot shoulder, you want to make sure that your lawnmower is a 4-foot wide lawnmower. And the only way to really know that is to talk to your maintainers. It would seem counterintuitive to have a 3-foot mower for a 4-foot shoulder, because then that's 2 passes. Another thing to be concerned about is vegetation around trailheads in those areas. A lot of times they'll get hit by snowplows, so that's always a concern. These maintainers will tell you, don't put the tree that close to the parking lot, you got to push it back. So always engage them on your design. The emergencies. Now this is something I've had to learn, is we have various things that do happen on the trail that are cause for emergencies, where someone is hurt, somebody is injured. We've had fire trucks go up the trail because it's the only way to access nearby homes. And of course, the construction aspects of the facility, washouts and so forth. So always plan for these. If your first responders need keys, we get them keys. I know AASHTO guidelines are for no bollards, but we're in such rural areas that we need the bollards for at least a semblance of control. And then coping with non-trail users, utilities, ATVs, and the homeless. We are going through Reading, Pennsylvania. There's a good homeless population in that area, especially during the recession. There are many camps along the trail because we're down by the river, and there's a good canopy of trees. So these are things that you sometimes can control, sometimes can't. ATVs could be a whole different seminar, but it is something that we all have to deal with. And the last thing is managing from the middle. because a trail manager is not the executive director of whatever organization it is or director. The trail manager is part of the administration staff. So on one hand, you have to work with the people to maintain and promote and use the trail. On the other hand, you have people that pay your salary that need to be shown how things can be done. So you're kind of working both sides, trying to persuade up top and persuade below. And so managing from the middle is quite a talent. And that's it. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Tom, and I hope to have some questions later on.
Great, thanks, Bob. Excellent, and I appreciate you giving us a little more of the basics as we go forward. That'll pay off. So I don't have any comments or questions right now, but I'm sure we will at the end. And sorry about those slow clicking. We're just a tad behind. So let's move to our next speakers and traveling a little west in Ohio. Let me hand it off to Dan and DJ, partners that RTC works with closely. They're in Columbus, Ohio, to learn more about their work in Central Ohio from a metropolitan parks management perspective. Gentlemen.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? My name's DJ and I got Dan here with me. We're park managers with Franklin County Metro Parks, which is around Columbus, Ohio. We'll go ahead and get you guys situated here once we get control of the PowerPoint. And all right, so we work really closely with the city of Columbus in their Parks and Rec department, but we are a different agency from them. We're based out of Franklin County, which is the surrounding county. As you see here, here's our overview of our park system and then the surrounding trails. We were established in 1945. We respond to the public, obviously, but is governed by 3 park board commissioners. Our parks in total have 27,500 acres of parkland, and we have 20 parks and a regional trail system that connects it. So as part of our regional trail system, we have over 100 miles of greenway trails that we manage, and then each of these other parks that interconnect into it also help manage different miles of trails.
Kind of an overview of the greenway trails. They're used for lots of different purposes, you know, recreation, health benefits, commuting purposes. And they go through lots of different jurisdictions. And so one of the things we do is we coordinate with other local agencies, community leaders, in regards to the maintenance of the trails in Central Ohio. And so we manage, 8 regional greenway trail systems you can see on your PowerPoint. You click to the next slide there. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about, since we do maintenance of an extensive trail network, is the amount of money that we spend annually on the trail. So our budget for this year was $750,000 roughly, and that's for employees, for a manager, some assistant managers. We're a little bit unique in that we have full-time commissioned officers, full-time ranger staff that patrol our trails and also help out in the maintenance aspect, and part-time rangers. We have park maintenance folks, both full-time and part-time. We also hire seasonal staff members to help during the busy season. The attendance of our trails are over 1 million visitors each year, and for our overall park district is 11 million people. Now that kind of gives you an idea, $750,000, but once you take out salaries, benefits, retirements, you're only looking at about $40,000 that we have to operate, about 100 miles of trails. And I can tell you easily, 10,000 of that's probably in fuel cost and stuff like that. And if we have equipment break, those expenses can add up quick. So it's not a lot amount of money to manage that many miles of trails.
Sure. So some of the things we're going to talk about maintenance, the maintenance world is we got obviously your basic stuff. We have your mowing, we have your plowing, and we have your blowing of trails for when the leaves get down. So mowing is the most common thing that we're doing during the spring, summer, and fall, spring and summer seasons for making sure that we keep that back, and that also includes pruning. So whereas with fall, we're a little bit more guided towards getting the leaves off the trail, the black walnuts, and some of the other hazards that end up falling down from the trees. And then in the winter, we actually take the time to plow the trails with our fleet of vehicles, and that's so that commuting purposes and recreation purposes can continue along during the winter season. It's really fun to see a whole bunch of people still utilizing the trails for recreation purposes after we just got 5 inches worth of snow the day before. So
and those are kind of the routine type things that we do on a daily basis. There's other trail maintenance that needs to be done when trees uproot trail and stuff like that, and we budget that into renovation projects every year. And if there's big sections of trail that need to be redone, that may go into a CIP improvement. And some of the more common things that were talked about before is storm damage requires lots of cleanup for that many miles of trails. Flooding can also, and we're pretty fortunate in that we can pull resources from around our park district to have other maintenance staff members or rangers come and help us clear these trails so they're still usable by the public. Here you can see some of our maintenance staff cutting up trees along the trail after big storms and stuff like that. One of the unique things we do to kind of help us out also is we have a Columbus school internship program here in Columbus where we hire about 100 high school students a year, and about 20 of them or so, help us out on the Greenway Trail system, keep pruning, picking up trash. We also have a good volunteer group and a lot of organized groups that like to help come out and remove invasive species like honeysuckle, pick up litter and stuff like that. But, what really makes maintenance efficient for us, a lot of it is we're very fortunate to have equipment to do so. So you can see those are Toro Groundsmaster 7200 Polar Tracks. They convert from mowers into plows in the wintertime. They also have blowers that hook up. So they're really universally tied to a good piece of trail equipment. Go ahead, DJ.
So next we're going to talk about something else that kind of makes us a little unique is that we're, even though we're in the middle of the city and we have concurrent jurisdiction with several adjacent agencies that can help us out, we do have a law enforcement staff. Our managers and our ranger staff, our full-time ranger staff are all commissioned peace officers in the state of Ohio. So we can go out there and handle some of these things specifically within our city and within our parks in the city. That directly affect the trail users and directly affect the parks themselves and within the county and specifically on the Greenway trails. We use alternative methods of patrol outside of our vehicle, and that's one of the things that we prioritize. We prefer, bike patrol is our number one along the Greenway trails. That way we're approachable by the public, and that we're also approachable by anyone who is out there who has any questions. It's a lot easier to ask a question to someone who's on a bike than someone who has their windows up in a vehicle. So we also do the different types of foot patrol, and then we also have UTV and other recreational vehicles that we can use to check the trails. We also have a ranger boat that, since most of our Greenway trails are adjacent to waterways, we utilize this in emergency rescue situations concurrently with some of our other rescue groups. So some of our guiding principles for being rangers is making the situation better, everyone going home safe, and the least amount of force necessary to gain compliance. You're going to probably see that in a lot of police forces, but it really helps us in, say, our homeless outreach. We work together with a lot of local jurisdictions and agencies to make sure that these people are not are being taken care of, but also not affecting the recreational or commuting people within the agency.
And so something unique also about our rangers is, our maintenance staff works Monday through Friday. And so if there's storm damage or trees that come down, these rangers also use chainsaws. I mean, they're trained on equipment and tractors, and they can go out and do just exactly what our maintenance staff does during the week.
A couple things here that we show from public interactions. We lead bike rides, and that kind of works. And then we also have bottom right picture there is volunteer cleanup with just some of our local agencies that we end up getting together with. As you know, we're seeing a whole bunch of different types of public uses nowadays. Who has scooters? Pretty much all the big cities. So if you're dealing with that, that's a very interesting one that we're utilizing nowadays. But majority of our people use it for running and biking.
One of the big things we wanted to talk about is partnerships. The way we came about managing the regional greenway trail system here in Columbus, or so many miles of it, is one of our fellow park agencies didn't pass the bond issue, and we were asked to help kind of take over and oversee management of the trail system. And, you know, beneficially, it worked good for the other park agency. It worked good for us. You know, building partnerships, I can't tell you, is key into what we do. It's often weekly I'm talking to other park managers and other park districts, and we're sharing ideas. We're, you know, who's the best person to repair a bridge? Who's the best person to, you know, fix a boardwalk and stuff. Sometimes things that not routinely what our maintenance staff does. And so we've learned a lot from our partnerships here in Columbus. You know, one of the things we struggle with as far as routine maintenance goes is when people build trails, planners and designers don't always, you know, take into consideration the maintenance of the trail system. And so we've had lots of success stories and we've had lots of failures. And, you know, something we could do better, I think, is communicate with the planners and developers of trails. There's a photo up there on the right. You can see about a 2-foot section of pavement to what's about at the back alley, and it's a little green space. When they built that trail, that was, you know, probably the consideration would have been, well, why don't we just make that all asphalt? Because it runs for about 2 miles. So that's 2 miles of trail that we would not have had to maintain. But now there's ornamental grasses in between posts for 2-mile stretch of trail, which can be challenging and time consuming for a maintenance staff to take care of. But partnerships, how it's worked, we have a great count system here in Columbus. We use traffic counters, multi-agencies. We have great memorandum of understandings written on, you know, whose responsibility is to take care of what and how we kind of help each other, and building trails with a management plan. And so I'm going to let DJ talk a little bit about how we reach our trail users.
So we go through a text alert system, which has been really great in the past, where people subscribe into this service and then we can get information to them quickly. And then our partners, as well as us, use social media and our websites to make sure that we're communicating as efficiently as possible to the masses that utilize our trail system. So we also have a way for people to get complaints in one way or another. In addition to our agency, there's one for the city of Columbus that uses a system called the 311 system. So that being said, there's a lot of different methods that are out there, but we just do our best to make sure we communicate one way or another with just about everyone. And that being said, we're looking forward for some questions here at the end as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the administrators.
Hey, thank you, DJ and Dan, for that insight. Very helpful. We're going to go a little over time here. We're a little bit behind, so I hope everybody will stay with us. Bob and DJ and Dan, is that okay with you guys? All right, good.
Yeah, I'll be fast too.
Okay.
They've covered a lot of good stuff.
Hey, one quick question for the Ohio gang. You have a lot more, especially even in your rural areas and suburban areas, asphalt trails than the Northeast United States, and even to some extent the Mid-Atlantic. And I know there are policies that, for example, federal money, if it goes to the DOT, that's going to be an asphalt trail and not a crushed stone trail. But how do you control routes? Do you use a ditch witch or anything like that?
So we have created a tractor implement. It's kind of it's a subsoiler that goes off. We just fabricated it. It goes off the side of a tractor, which can go through and tear up shallow routes along the trail system, but it's not going to get your big, deep routes. So when we have to repair the trail system from where big, deep roots have upheaved big sections of trail, we have to use a partner saw. and we saw up the asphalt and we dig down and we cut the root out, and then we have to put back down the sub base and then usually put cold or hot patch back. When we first took over the regional greenway trail system, or about 40 miles of it, from one of our partners, we actually spent a hefty amount of money and contracted a lot of that work out, upwards of about $100,000. And so we took care of it, a lot of it right away. And then now that we've kind of caught up on it, we can approach it a little bit faster and easier, one or two at a time, as opposed to, 50 uproots on a trail at a time.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Very helpful. So, hey, let's go. We're going to go 10 minutes over. I see from Mission Control that everybody's agreed to that, at least our speakers. I hope everybody else can stay on. So let's skip a couple of time zones and go to the West Coast and get Matt's perspective from an urban area and also an underserved area, but starting to build some great trails out there. Matt, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, take it away.
Yes. Okay, great. Awesome. Ooh, and now I've got the clicky things too. Okay, yeah, so Richmond's a really special town. This was one of the great World War II boom towns. We built 747 ships here in 3 years. It used to take 18 months to build one of those, and we built them in 4 days. So this town really saved this country's butt during World War II. But in the post-war boom, where California got rich off Pentagon money, we kind of had to reinvent our own version of white supremacy. So we had a lot of exclusionary housing where the rest of the Bay Area wouldn't allow the black war workers that helped win the war move into the newer, nicer neighborhoods. So there was really a concentration of low-income communities of color in Richmond, which has led to this, 70-year gap between political power and the investment that comes from that. And so when we got our Rails to Trails project, which you can see on your screen there, really bisects our town, it was really different than the Rails to Trails project that was dropped into my rural community. They pulled up the Biz Johnson Trail and you had a DG path and there was guys in tight spandex riding bikes and everything was fine. But when this happened in Richmond, it tore up railroads that had really divided neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods had developed really distinct characteristics. And it also caused a whole host of ecological problems. But, our ecological problems around here come in secondary to our economic problems. And so you'll probably hear me say the word poverty a lot today. And the forces of poverty really moved into this new space. And it became a dangerous and unwelcoming space. And the city never had the money to deal with it. And so they originally considered giving it to the adjacent property owners, but some advocates fought that. And after 25 years, it's become established as this linear municipal park that is really envisioned, designed, managed, and maintained by community groups. We're really good at building stone soup. So it's also was never included in the original parks management plans that were in the collective bargaining agreements with the SEIU Gardeners Guild. So we're kind of allowed to work in this space without stepping on the toes of the organized folks. Let me see. Oh, I've got a spinning wheel of death. So I'll click through real quick to show you what we've done with the space. So you saw, we went too far, too fast. That's fine. We can leave this right here. So you can see how the greenway has been divided into, somebody else has a mouse going out there. Been divided into little program areas that are defined by different nonprofits. And so we have everything from edible community gardens to water bioswales and rain garden features to large community centers. I think your screen, whoever screen I'm sharing, is hiding the controls. Let me see if I can just toggle with my screen. I think that's back. I wanted to show you the parks that we've taken responsibility for. So there's 17 groups that have joined this coalition called the Friends of the Richmond Greenway, and we usually work together pretty well. And we're able to use our investment of time and energy to leverage the state's money. California is flush with cash through its greenhouse gas reduction fund. And so they will only pay for capital improvements, which is a pretty seductive, let me see if that's gonna, oh, this is the one I want, which is a pretty seductive, oh dear God. Oh, we went all the way to the end. Let me go back a few slides. It's a pretty seductive thing. Yeah.
You got it, Matt? Okay. Yeah, you got it, okay?
Yep, I can see it now. So it's pretty seductive to take this money from the state of California and build new things. You can see our bioswales here. You just click through some of the public art. This was actually federal money. The feds used to be around in California, but they're kind of a no-show lately. I can say that because we were actually created by the EPA and the National Park Service to address brownfields. And because the EPA has been kind of a no-show for the past several years, we've really reoriented to California's urban greening money and parks money. And so this is actually an addition to the Greenway, the Miraflores Sustainable Greenbelt. Here we go. This gives you an idea of the kind of stuff that we're building out here. We're taking old brownfields and we're working with communities to design what they want to see in there. And so it can kind of be hodgepodge, but it's what we need to do to make people care about the space so that the maintenance costs don't just balloon and skyrocket. So when you work with the neighbors to plant the trees and their kids are out there seeing their mom and dad help plant the trees, it really cuts down on the vandalism. We can really tell the difference between forestry projects where there was a lot of community participation and forestry projects where we've just used our job training program to plug them in. We've also been able to use the Greenway to address sort of big city infiltration issues, water issues. You know, that rails, that Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway cut the city in half and dammed up what little water we do get. But when we get water in California, we get a lot of it. So we have serious flooding problems, and that east-west bisect of the city really exacerbates those problems. So we've been able to crack out the old storm drains from the 50s that just channeled everybody's brake dust and motor oil right into the bay. And we've been able to build riparian habitat to help slow, sink, and filter that water out. Let me click through to the end here. I think this is forward. Yeah, there it is. The Microsoft toolbar kind of keeps hiding the controls. So we've got the capital improvement money. But what we don't have is the long-term maintenance money. So this all has to be handled through job training money that we get from either the state or the federal Department of Labor or private foundation money. And amazingly, we've been able to field a lot of people, ourselves and the other organizations, through nature immersion and environmental education monies. So we're able to get people out there in place-based, hands-on service learning projects that are meeting many of the maintenance needs of many of these spaces. There are still, so, you know, when we get money to build like the pollinator garden, bringing people out to prepare that spot is really how we keep that place somewhat presentable. I think Robert said, you know, we do it 3 times a year, and we pretty much do 3 litter cleanups, and we do a blitz of weed abatement, which out here really turns into fire. It just kind of helps highlight the fact that we have to use other things to get this work done. Nobody's paying us to take care of these spaces. And so, you know, I gripe about that a lot, but in the end, having this Rails to Trails project that has all of these potential climate benefits, absorption benefits, greenhouse gas sequestration benefits is just an amazing opportunity that gives me meaningful projects that people care about and can see. So it's a whole can of worms, and it's a ton of problems. And, you know, it's full of homeless encampments. I can't stress enough to you folks out there how many people are out of their homes here in California. We're the most poverty impacted state in the country. $117,000 has been determined low income. for the Bay Area. And we got people squeaking by on less than 35. So there are people with jobs who are still living in our greenway spaces. And so finding a way to not be the next group of people that displaces those people while continuing to improve these open spaces and continuing to bring people along and caring for them has been really a challenge. When I saw the survey earlier about the greatest expenses, hands down for us, it's the bathrooms, because our bathrooms are the only safe shelter that homeless women can find. So they're breaking in and locking themselves in at night. And that's a weekly expense for a pretty expensive lock and a pretty expensive skylight. So open space has a lot of potential for us. It also, in light of poverty and inequality, really is a challenge that only a large collaborative of really diverse nonprofits can address. And as much as I'd like to complain about the city not solving its problems, we understand how we got here, and we're just really grateful that they are flexible enough to give us the leeway and the permission that we need to develop these spaces with the communities we serve. There's definitely other cities here in the region that say no to partnering like this, but Richmond is, we've really flipped the script here. All development and all improvements, they have to start with the community first, and they require community authorization before anything can move forward. And this greenway has really been one of the best sites in our city to sort of live out that model. Lots of beautiful stuff. I could share it all day long, but I think I can. We deal with all the same maintenance issues that the previous presenters did a better job detailing. The one thing we do get from the city is when there are major issues, serious safety issues with the paving, lighting, or fire abatement, we can raise our hand for some emergency attention. But by and large, 85% of the maintenance on the Richmond Greenway is done by nonprofits who have woven this maintenance responsibility into our education and engagement programming.
Thank you, Matt. That was excellent. And I think hearing from a different perspective of how you're getting it done by giving people a skin in the game and a sense of ownership, and also talking about the bigger context, not just the trail 12 feet, but the greater greenway and all the activities you have going in there. What did you say again for the costs of maintaining the trail? And I know it's hard to differentiate the trail from the wider corridor in some instances, but can you give us a sense of that?
Yeah, it's tough to get a calculation on that. I can tell you that we're spending, just under $200,000 a year on job training and urban forestry activity that we just try to locate in and around the Richmond Greenway.
Okay.
And that's, and we're really only absorbing half of the Greenway.
Right.
Some of the other nonprofits are putting in similar figures on much smaller turfs of land. And then there are big abandoned spots of the Greenway because they're kind of isolated by BNSF assets that we still haven't been able to carve out.
Right.
So those places are there. That's where we're dealing with the real invasive problems.
Okay.
Because we don't have right of access, and BNSF just backs a train up on it once a year.
Right.
And, so they kind of keep it out of our hands. But that'll all change soon enough. And for good or bad, household income is rising in Richmond. We're really seeing a displacement phenomenon where organizations like us that were designed to address poverty are improving green infrastructure features that are making better off folks feel more comfortable.
Right.
And so as we make bike trails,
I'm going to have to end you there, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. That concludes that portion of the presentation, leaving us about 10 minutes to tackle some of your questions. And also, While we're doing that, we're going to have one final question for you that'll pop up on your screen. If you can multitask there, please answer that final question, because that'll help us create the future series of webinars on maintenance. And then Brian.
And Tom.
Yes.
Tom, I'll load that question in a moment, and I'll let you know when it's ready, okay?
Okay, thank you. And then Brian, do you, you've been culling some of the questions coming into the question box. Do you want to throw out a few zingers for us?
Yeah, for sure. I want to mention to everyone that, we will be sharing the recording after this. So not only will you be able to hear the answers to some great questions, but we'll also follow up, and you can follow up, as you can see on the slide on the screen, with the presenters with some of the ones we don't get to. So I really like this question, which was, how do you encourage trail users to report problems such as downed trees? And, I wonder if any of our presenters have any strategies for getting trail users more engaged.
Hi, this is DJ and Dan with Franklin County Metro Parks. So we get our methods from multiple different ways, including social media. The best way to get a hold of us has been just directly call our ranger cell phone number, which is in operation at any time that the parks are open. The greenways never close, but our typical visitation is early in the morning.
And it's all posted on signage and bulletin boards throughout our regional greenway trail system. So if you're out on the trail and you stop at any of those signs or bulletin boards, you can find not only the Greenways Ranger cell phone, but a Metro Parks dispatcher cell phone to report any problems, maintenance-wise, or any emergencies that may occur.
We have a nuisance, if you can still hear me, we have a nuisance reporting app. We don't get too many down tree issues because this is a landlord town and landlords cut down trees, so all of our trees are brand new babies. But we do have a GPS-enabled nuisance reporting app that's used a lot to report illegal dumping and safety issues. And that goes straight to the Parks Department, and then they send it to us.
This is Bob over in Schuylkill. We have a trail ambassador program of about 70, 80 trail ambassadors. So I get calls within minutes. These guys are out almost 24/7.
Nice. Yeah, that's some great feedback. So another question that we got is, how have you found funding for trail maintenance equipment? And related to that, how long do you expect that equipment to last?
This is Dan and DJ from Columbus Franklin County Metro Parks. We're a kind of unique organization as we're a levy-based agency where the voters of Franklin County, Ohio vote as a park district on us every 10 years. And so we actually have funds budgeted for us that we plan ahead, 10 years in advance when we go ask the voters for, to vote yes for our levy. And so, that we have tried in the past to apply for a recreational trail RTP grant through the state of Ohio for a piece of trail equipment. We were not awarded the grant that year, but there are opportunities like that here in the state of Ohio for grant opportunities. But for the most part, we're budgeted, and we expect our trail equipment to last as long as we can. We just retired a mower that was 35 years old. The current tractor we're using along the Greenway trails is a 1990. And so, one of the things we like to do is maintain the equipment that we have. So, if you treat it well, it'll last a long time.
Any other thoughts on that one?
This is Bob over in Schuylkill. We have 2 volunteer coordinators that are paid basically a stipend each year to take care of 2 trail sections that we have. Fortunately, one is a farmer and they have all kinds of equipment, and the other's a contractor. So we have been had the advantage of since our opening of not having to buy the equipment. We do pay for the use of the equipment, of their equipment on the trail, but we've not had to actually purchase any.
I can just chime in real quick. We've been lucky with equipment, sort of for all the wrong reasons. The city can't allocate any money to the positions that it needs, so it does have end of the year spending that it can do, and that often goes into equipment.
Great. So a couple more questions and then we'll wrap things up. So one of the things that I think many of you got at that people have asked about is what regulatory changes would support your maintenance activities?
I'm laughing because we banned glyphosate, Roundup about 5 or 6 years ago, and the maintenance staff of the city were really bent out of shape about that because it was the only way for a skeleton workforce to stay out in front of seasonal weeds. We've been trying to help with that work, but we're also not trying to eat out of the union bowl. So some sort of a change around nonprofits like myself who are helping with park maintenance, being embraced in some sort of apprenticeship with organized labor would allow us to bring the people hours out there because we can't use the chemicals anymore.
DJ with Franklin County Metro Parks again. Something that could possibly help out in future considerations is we have so many grants and possibilities for building the trails, but there's not as many follow-up ones for maintaining the trails. So it's great to get all the what I'll call the fund dollars for the building of the trail, but then it doesn't really. There's near as many grants or possibilities for the follow-up with the maintenance. We're very fortunate here in Franklin County to have voters who support what we do, and we can fund our trail maintenance through our tax levy, which is voted on every 10 years. So, but if we did not have that capability, we would be stuck with trying to get funds from grants in state of Ohio or nonprofits for maintenance, and how do we make that more appealing than building a trail? So that's one thing that I would have to say about that.
This is Bob over in Schuylkill. We have two programs. Well, three actually. The trail keepers who come out 4 or 5 times a year, and their volunteers work for the trail coordinators I mentioned before. We also have an Adopt a Trail program for volunteers to come out. It's on a per mile basis, goes to civic groups and so forth. And then we also have a Sponsor a Trail program. So in effect, I saw the same mile twice, one to an adopter and another to a sponsor. And the sponsor actually pays for the $500 to $700 a mile that it costs to maintain the trail. So we've tried to reach some sustainability. It hasn't completely taken effect, but because sponsors drop in and out all the time, and you're constantly looking for more. But it's something that has really helped offset our maintenance costs.
Bob, how many hours? This is Tom. How many hours do you get from volunteers? Do you keep those?
Oh yeah. We get for the trail itself about 2,000 hours.
2,000 hours, and that's over the 75 miles, or is that over the 35 that you're?
That's just my 35 miles.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I'm just going to highlight a few things, but then if anybody stays on for a couple more minutes, I have one more question that I think is awesome. But I do want to mention that unanswered questions we will attempt to answer in a follow-up email. And I also want to highlight that we will be sending a post survey to try to get more of an understanding of what you all would like to see in our future maintenance webinars. And I also want to mention that the survey, will come with the recorded version of today's webinar. So, I want to thank everybody for being involved, but for anybody that's staying on, and it seems like we got quite a few, I really love this question from Jillian, which is, if the presenters have any ideas about how to monetize the trail to cover maintenance costs.
Well, this is Bob. I had mentioned the sponsor a trail program. That's how we do it. Another thing we do is if there's any easements or crossings or temporary construction that happens, a lot of these corridors in our area have pipelines that go to Marcus Hook and so forth. So anytime the trail generates money like that through a temporary construction easement from Sun Pipeline, Reading Area Water Authority put a trail or a water line down the trail for like 5 miles. All of these things pay back in benefits and costs, and they all go to our maintenance funds.
I just want to thank Bob, DJ and Dan, Matt and Tom, as well as Kelly and Yvonne in the background for doing such a great job. Clearly, this is a topic that is going to require a lot of focus and development. And I just want to say again that Rails to Trails Conservancy, as a team, we're very excited to help support all the maintenance activities across the nation. And we'll be following up with you. Let your friends know that we're trying to tackle this maintenance challenge, and we're looking forward to our future webinar series. So happy trails to everyone, and have a great rest of your day.